Hi everyone, welcome to Port River Restoration Projects and the work of the Estuary Care Foundation, which was formed in 2016, and our work's undertaken by volunteers, except where we win grants that enable us to hire contractors. We're found in the northwestern suburbs of Adelaide, and our estuary coexists between industry, with our working port increasing, our defence industry increasing, a growing residential population, and an estuary that includes millions of shellfish, plus our resident dolphin population. And one of the lovely features is that our water quality has improved so that it's now a swimmable port river. And this is very different from our earlier industrial history. This is the north and the east of our estuary. And this is in the inner harbour of Port Adelaide, where our trials are based. So the reason why the foundation began its work came out of the climate change adaptation plan for our area, which showed that we were one of the most at-risk areas in the state for sea level rise. That led to an introduction to a local ecologist and the work that she'd been observing in the US with living shorelines. And in our context, she indicated that multi-species, shellfish reefs, seagrass, samphires and mangroves could all form part of a nature-based response to sea level rise. So the work that the foundation does includes a series of trials that we do. We're also advocating for our flooding risks to be addressed, for a governance structure to be established for the river, and we engage with the community, seeking to encourage people to have a closer connection to our river and to the estuary. So the Port River Shellfish Restoration Project was our first project in early 2016, and we were delighted to learn that native oysters were an iconic species of our area. Some of our local residents were inspired by the Billion Oyster Project in the Hudson River, and we were keen to connect our community to the river to demonstrate or to highlight that native oysters can improve water quality as filter feeders, and also to highlight that the river, in supporting the dolphins, actually is a complex living system. So one of the threads we like to draw is the connection with the environment of our First Nations people, and this photograph shows a midden by Newport Keys when it was being constructed. So the stages that we've gone through, we've had native oysters out in baskets when they were about 18 months old, and they started to grow within several weeks, and they doubled in weight within a year. We then put out 1,000 spat in four baskets, and when they also were able to survive and grow, we've established 2 small shellfish reefs. And we've still got some oysters in baskets with a couple of our industrial partners. This shows some of our volunteers, which includes people from the Marine Life Society, the local environment groups, the Malacological or Shell Collectors Society, and in the right-hand corner, our volunteers are putting out coconut fibre bags to create a small reef. This is one of our oysters on that reef, acting as an ecological warrior and filtering the local port river. So the outcomes, we sought to adopt a community development approach and engage as many people as possible. We were successful with the oysters and spat, and we've built our reefs, which were low cost sort of reefs. We've had oysters out on our reef, but our numbers have declined, but we're not seeing the shells of those. So we're not completely sure what's happened there. We are finding that the oysters that we've got spat, they're creating spat, and they're settling. But again, we're uncertain about survival rates. So we've got some uncertainty still that we're trying to answer about predation and silt and temperature and whether our reefs need to be a bit lower in the river. We've undertaken a living shoreline trial, which meant, as we do with all of these trials, securing grants and approval. And we've again used the coir bags with recycled Pacific oyster shell from South Australian growers. We've transplanted some mangrove seedlings and some mangrove propagules. And here are some of our volunteers, both with putting down the bags and then transplanting the small mangrove seedlings. And that was just before our really, really hot summer of a bit over a year ago. So again, we've had community engagement, and at present, most of our bags are intact and about 20% of our mangrove seedlings are survived. Sediment's accumulating behind the bags, and in that we see masses of crabs and other organisms, and we see shorebirds using the bags to feed at low tide. We've also undertaken a living seawall trial, and these are tiles that the Sydney Institute of Marine Studies has developed. So our 2 frames with 11 tiles each ended up going in at different times, and they're showing different results. So the tiles that were installed in February 2020 have lots of Pacific oysters growing on them, whereas the tiles that went in October 2020 have conical barnacles. These actually are the dominant species that we find on seawalls, and we're still hoping for a broader collection of different species to congregate. But in the meantime, we see lots of small fish, and last year a Flinders University student began monitoring, and we hope future students will continue that. Some of the challenges and priorities include what priorities people have around things like climate adaptation and grants, getting grants to be able to successfully monitor our trials, but also to do larger scale trials. We're really excited about the potential of blue carbon, and blue carbon is seagrasses and samphires and mangroves, and the carbon dioxide that they take in and store. And one of the things we hope we're doing is shifting the dial on having the estuary matter. These are some of the ways that we seek to engage with our local community through Instagram and an environmental walk on the Council's tourism app, and our Port Oyster Tales and Bubbles and other events. Some of our next steps include making best use of our 2 Oz Ocean rigs. Portside Christian College has built one of those and it's already deployed, and we're looking to work out what we'll be monitoring with the second rig in the Inner Harbour. We're going to do a robust oyster basket trial with Ozfish, with the South Australian Adelaide chapter of Ozfish, and we're seeking to progress a proposed swimming facility in the Inner Harbour with the North Haven Surf Life Saving Club. This is where you can find us, and thanks very much for your interest.